Welcome to Waters World. I'm Jesse Waters. The Waters Awards. That is the subject of tonight's Waters Words. Now, in honor of the Academy Awards this weekend, our producers thought it would be fun to host our own award show. Let's begin with our first category. Best Actor in a Political Drama. Here are the nominees. Cory Booker at the Kavanaugh confirmation hearing.
I'm going to release the email about racial profiling, and I understand that the penalty comes with potential ousting from the Senate. I openly invite and accept the consequences. This is about the closest I'll probably ever have in my life to an I am Spartacus moment.
Jussie Smollett on GMA.
He said, "This MAGA country punches me right in the face." So I punched it back. The camera facing north, how is that my issue? I want that video found so badly. And I want a little gay boy who might watch this to see that I fought back. I'm pissed off. How do you not believe that? It's the truth.
And Rachel Maddow on MSNBC.
Trump administration officials have been sending babies and other young children. Oh, hold on. Can we put up the graphic of this? Thank you. Do we have it? No.
And the winner is Jussie Smollett on GMA. That was a runaway winner right there, folks. All right. Next category, Best Fight Scene. Here are the nominees. Donald Trump versus Jim Acosta.
That's enough.
Pardon me, ma'am.
Excuse me. Tell you what, CNN should be ashamed of itself having you working for them. You are a rude, terrible person.
Oh, Senator Marco Rubio versus radio talk show host Alex Jones.
That's why the deplatforming didn't work.
But here's the question. Here's a question.
Hey, don't touch me again, man. I'm asking you not to touch me.
Well, sure, I'll just patted you nicely.
I know, but I don't want to be. I don't know.
You want me to get arrested?
I don't know who you are.
It's not just going to take
get arrested, man. You're not going to get arrested.
Take my First Amendment.
Myself.
Oh, he'll beat me up.
Ooh, I'd love to see that. Senator Lindsey Graham versus all of the Democrats at the Kavanaugh hearing.
What you've done to this guy, this is the most unethical sham since I've been in politics. And if you really wanted to know the truth, you sure as hell wouldn't have done what you've done to this guy. This is going to destroy the ability of good people to come forward because of this crap.
And the winner is Trump versus Jim Acosta. And with an honorable mention for the White House intern who had to get her hands very dirty. All right. Next category, most politically correct. All right. Here are the nominees. The University of Maryland for creating a support group for white students who feel, quote, confused before, during, or after interactions with minorities. All right. Also nominated, Northeastern professor Susanna Walters, a gender studies professor who wrote that men should, quote, step away to make room for women as they, quote, have every right to hate you. And our final nominee, Minnesota State University professor Eric Sprankle, who said that the Virgin Mary did not give consent to become pregnant with Jesus Christ. Okay? And the winner is Minnesota Professor Sprankle. That was an easy one. Sprankle, I thought there was an immaculate conception. You give consent for that. New category. Best political comedy. Here are the nominees. President Donald Trump.
They go back home to mommy. They get punished when they get home. A show now headed by Sleepy Eyes Chuck Todd. He's a sleeping son of a bitch. Da Nang, Richard Blumenthal. I watch him saying, we need the truth. If we don't have, and here's a guy who was saying people were dying all around him and he was never there.
CNN's Jim Acosta at the border.
Here are some of the steel slats that the president's been talking about right here. As a matter of fact, it's pretty tranquil down here.
Of course it is, Jim. And Kanye West shocks the press in the Oval Office.
Let me give this guy a hug right here. I'm married to a family that, not a lot of male energy going on. It's about when I put this hat on, it made me feel like Superman. Non-political, no put the beep on it. This is our president. He has to be the freshest, the flyest planes. You are tasting a fine wine. It has multiple notes to it.
That was pretty impressive. I hate to say this, Jim. Do you want to say something?
And the winner is... Donald Trump. He wins it every year. It's just not fair. Jim was a close second. Last but not least, the dumbest political commentary. Our nominees are Beto O'Rourke.
Would you, if you could, would you take the wall down now? Here.
Yes.
Like you have a wall.
Absolutely.
Knock it down.
I'd take the wall down.
And do you think...
Taking the wall down. Elizabeth Warren.
Now, the president likes to call my mom a liar. What do the facts say?
The facts suggest that you absolutely have a Native American ancestor in your pedigree.
Okay.
Sure. And Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez.
Millennials and people and Gen Z and all these folks that come after us are looking up, and we're like, the world is going to end in 12 years if we don't address climate change. And your biggest issue is your biggest issue is how are we going to pay for it? And this is the war. This is our World War II.
World's going to end how long? How many years? And the winner is Pocahontas. Elizabeth Warren, who revealed through a DNA test that she was not Native American, even though she claimed she was. That is it for the Waters Awards. I'd like to thank all of our winners for their outstanding work this year, and for the losers, better luck next time. In her endless quest to take your hard-earned money out of your hands, liberal lightning rod Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is sticking by her 70% tax plan on incomes over $10 million. Watch this.
Why are you trying to take all our money away from us? We just signed the Showtime, and now you're trying to put the wild tax on billionaires. What's wrong with you?
If you make more than $10 million in 1 year, which is a pretty good year.
That's a damn good year.
If you make
that's some El Chapo.
10 million, yes, seriously. If you make more than 10 million in 1 year, your 10 millionth and $1 gets taxed at 70%, which, by the way, we used to have marginal tax rates under Republican presidents of 90%. It really comes down to the question of, isn't 10 million enough? When does it stop?
Joining me now, someone who knows a thing or two about your dollars and cents, the host of Mornings with Maria on the Fox Business Network and of Sunday Morning Futures right here on Fox News, Maria Bartiromo. Welcome to Waters World.
Hey, it's great to be here in your world.
There, you've been practicing, I can tell. So, in my opinion, I think what she's doing was saying, isn't $10 million enough? I think that's un-American. Do you agree?
It is un-American, Jesse. I mean, really, is it enough? What's enough? So is Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez going to be the judge of what's enough now? Should I check with her and how hard I should work and how much I might want to achieve in my life? I mean, it's basically putting a limit on people's achievements and their dreams. I thought the last time we talked, this was the American dream, right, that you could come from nothing and work as hard as you can and make money and as much success as you can have. So
it's going to be the American nightmare if she's in charge.
Yeah.
Let's look at some celebrities who she believes have made enough money. Look at George Clooney. Now, we just looked this up. He made $239 million last year. Hell of a year, George. All right, so after taxes on that first, I think, $10 million, I mean, he's only taken home about $70 million, as opposed to $239. George needs the money. He needs the money. LeBron, is she going to tell LeBron James, who made $85.5 million last year, you know what, we're going to cut that in more than half? I dare her to tell LeBron he's made enough money.
No, I don't think so, because she's basically just deciding who should make the money and who shouldn't. They're probably okay making that kind of money. But when you talk about a corporate CEO or a billionaire, well, then it becomes a really bad word.
Yeah, because look at Bill Gates. I mean, the Gates Foundation has eliminated polio pretty much in the continent of Africa because of his generosity and success. Is she going to say, you know what? We're not going to eliminate polio?
Right. Well, you know what? I think you make a really good point, because these kinds of rules and policies where you are punishing the highest earners for earning a lot of money, they have unintended consequences. So are we going to see the Ken Langones of the world still give $100 million like he just did to NYU Medical School so that eventually they can give out free medical school education?
And I was just at NYU. I'm not going to tell you why I was there, but I was just at the hospital, and it was a beautiful place, and it was very well run.
Thank you, Ken Langone.
Thank you, Ken. And she went to Harvard, and Harvard has a huge endowment, and she should want that. Now, we sound like people sucking up to billionaires. That's how the Democrats are going to run. They're going to run on attacking billionaires. How does the Republican Party combat that smear that Republicans are just the party of the rich?
Well, first of all, it is un-American, like you said. I mean, you shouldn't crush people's ability to come from nothing, work hard, and make what they can make. But I think one way that the Republicans really need to hit at this is you have to address the underlying problem that the left is bringing up, and that is there is income inequality still.
Well, how do they address that?
The capitalism lifts people out of poverty. That's what we've been seeing. I would say that the Republicans need an education policy. They need to come out big on education policy. Look, our workers in this country are being attacked. They've got AI on the right. They've got China on the left. They've got illegals in the middle. And they all want our jobs. And that's just a fact. I mean, robotics is taking over. I think we need to be teaching our students about machine learning, about AI, about robotics at a young age. But then you're going to face the teachers union.
Oh,
they're not going to like that.
Those are scary
but
people.
That's one of the issues. This goes back to education, Jesse. You know that.
So I see what you're saying. So instead of focusing on taking wealth away from the rich people and redistributing it, because that money never gets into their hands. It's not like you're taking money from LeBron and giving it to a poor person. That's not how it works. You're saying the Republicans need to come out with an education push to help Americans and workers lift each other up with their own skills.
Yeah, so that they can have their own skills to get the job, to work really hard, and make as much money as they can.
So
let's put them on a good playing field to do that.
Is it hypocritical when you have someone like Elizabeth Warren, who's worth close to $10 million?
Yeah, she is.
Or Bernie Sanders, who's got 3 homes? They're all a mess, though. My Secret Service friends say that it's just like an episode of Hoarders over there.
Well, doesn't Nancy Pelosi own a vineyard?
Yeah, she's got the vineyard. And do they look like hypocrites saying, oh, you know, let's tax the rich when they're sitting pretty?
Yeah, well, a bit, yes. But that's why they have this new tagline. The new talking point is for the people. Our program is for the people. I want to know what people want
people?
a trillion plus dollar plan. Yeah, that's right. But the people for a green plan that makes absolutely no sense, or for Medicare for all, which basically destroys the entire private insurance industry.
Well, you mentioned the green plan. Ocasio-Cortez was asked about eliminating cow flatulence. Here is what she said. Roll it.
My Twitter mentions I'm getting a lot of references about cow farts. And I think that's a reference to your Green New Deal.
We got to address factory farming. Maybe we shouldn't be eating a hamburger for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Like, let's keep it real.
Slow down.
Yeah, I mean, hey.
I'll be at Shake Shack.
Your chopped cheese, okay? But we have to take a look at everything, and what we need to realize is that climate change is about every choice that we make in our lives.
Oh, don't come after the hamburgers.
No more hamburgers
Dangerous.
for you, Jesse. No soup. Look, I mean, obviously this green plan has been panned and actually exposed for what it is. It makes no sense. Let me quote the Wall Street Journal on her plan, saying that she wants the U.S. to be carbon neutral within 10 years. Non-carbon sources provide only 11% of energy today. That would mean a complete remake of the electric power system. She wants all buildings in New York to be redone. I mean, it's absolute pie-in-the-sky dreams.
Donald Trump, the Big Mac president, is going to feast on these people if they come for the burgers. Maria Bartiromo, everybody. So we are debuting a new segment on Watters World. It's called What We Learned About Democrats This Week. Kamala Harris kicking things off in New Hampshire. She wants to get rid of Columbus Day.
Would you support efforts on a federal level to change Columbus Day to Indigenous Peoples Day?
I appreciate and applaud your point and your effort, and count me in on support.
There goes the Italian vote. By the way, do we still get a 3-day weekend? Bernie Sanders officially jumping into the 2020 race. While many socialists are probably thrilled, a video from the past May points to his future plans for America.
You know, it's funny, sometimes American journalists talk about how bad a country is because people are lining up for food. That's a good thing. In other countries, people don't line up for food. The rich get the food and the poor starve to death.
Okay. Speaking of things that sound good on paper but fail to live up, video of Beto O'Rourke from his punk rock past. Beto here rocking out on rhythm guitar back in 2003, wearing a onesie and a sheep mask. But that's not the only questionable costume the Texas native has donned. Beto here dressed to impress, wearing a dress? But even scarier. FBI statistics revealing Minneapolis, Minnesota as the top hotbed for terror here in America. FBI stats showing 45 Somalis have left the city to join ISIS or al-Shabaab, and another dozen arrested while trying to leave for ISIS. By the way, Minnesota's 5th congressional district, which includes Minneapolis, repped by none other than freshman firebrand Rep. Omar, who has defended wannabe terrorists in the past, not making any connections, just pointing out the facts. Joining me now, counselor to the president, Kellyanne Conway. How are you doing, Kellyanne?
Hi, Jesse.
So I wanted to play some sound of Senator Harris talking about reparations and her support of them. Listen to this.
America has a history of 200 years of slavery. Mm-hmm. We had Jim Crow. We had legal segregation in America for a very long time. People aren't starting out on the same base in terms of their ability to succeed. And so we have got to recognize that and give people a lift up.
So you are for some type of
Yes, I am.
reparation? Okay.
Yes, I am.
Okay, more craziness from the Democrats, Kellyanne. I don't see why she doesn't sponsor a bill. She's a senator. Put it up to a vote.
She should do that. Actually, some experts say this could cost trillions of dollars, and none other than our first African-American president, Barack Obama, did not show support for this when asked many different times. Hillary Clinton, Bernie Sanders, other top Democrats. I think Kamala Harris, after having a really good rollout and really good fundraising numbers, has been stumbling quite a bit.
I agree.
I'd say the 4 S's really quickly. Smollett, as in the guy she called her friend, one of the kindest, gentlest people she knows who's been turned out. Now he's the target of a criminal investigation. Socialism, she said she's for Medicare for all. How many people who work in the private insurance industry in her home state of California would lose their jobs if we had Medicare for all? 180 million people or so would lose their private insurance. Also, I would say the smoking. Her own father came out against her, saying, how dare you stereotype our Jamaican heritage by saying smoking pot is okay. And then, of course, shopping. Because we want female candidates to all be looked upon as serious, so she went shopping for the Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor jacket with female reporters.
Yeah, and the reporters were helping her try it on and yucking it up. I can't imagine if the roles were reversed there. You brought up Jussie Smollett. You know, alleged attack, everybody said. No video evidence, but that was an alleged attack. And then we have an actual attack, so we believe, out in Berkeley, where a Turning Point USA young conservative student was punched in the face. Video evidence, let's watch.
Jesus Christ. What?
Ooh. Wow, right in the kisser. So how do you, Kellyanne, reconcile, you know, these political hate crimes, which I believe those are, and we have a guy later in the show who got a gun pulled to him because he was wearing a MAGA hat. Now you have a guy getting punched in the face. And then these other hate crime hoaxes and Jussie Smollett, which gets so much attention. There's just very unbalanced coverage.
Well, it's completely unbalanced. And look, people, there are always going to be liars out there, but their enablers in the mainstream media are really what should concern everyone, because people are charged with delivering us the news, not their opinions, not their likes and retweets on Twitter, not what they hope is the truth, but what is the truth. You just saw the man be assaulted, a crime committed against him on the videotape. We all know what we see. And yet, when Jussie Smollett came out and gave his account, all the headlines, all the comments, none of them said Jussie Smollett says he was attacked. It says he is a victim of a racist, homophobic attack by MAGA people. Very few people, if any, in the media use the words alleged or even just attribute it as his account. The only question they had was, is it a hate crime? And look what's happened there.
Yeah.
So what's happening is the whole First Facts, truth crowd really invents their own according to who the perpetrator is, who the victim is. But I want that guy found who punched and assaulted. That is a crime. What you saw, that guy should be found, expelled from the school, and held to account in California.
All right. Thank you very much, Kellyanne. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Jesse.
Coming up, a Watters World exclusive. We have a Trump supporter, as I said, who had a gun pointed at his head just for wearing a MAGA hat. But up next, the Jussie Smollett episode, Winners and Losers. Stick around.
Singer R. Kelly being held on a $1 million bond in Chicago. He was charged Friday with 10 counts of criminal sexual abuse against 4 females, 3 of whom were minors. The alleged crimes took place between 1998 and 2010. I'm John Scott. Now, back to Life, Liberty, and Levin.
General Keane, Russia. You know, it's a relatively poor country. It's got the GDP of Texas. It doesn't have an enormous number of people, relatively, again speaking, and yet, under Putin, they're really focused on R&D on their military too, aren't they?
Oh, yeah, very much so. You're right to start with some of the challenges that Russia has, because they are significant. They're the largest country landmass in the world. They have 150 million people in it, which is half the population, less than half the population of the United States. Of the industrialized states, they're number 1 in HIV. They're number 1 in respiratory and cardiovascular diseases. They have an enormously high alcoholic problem in their country, and they've had that for generations. And their economy is in a tank. The ruble is in trouble. Inflation is spiraling out of control. And they're a one commodity product country in terms of oil and gas, and very dependent on what the prices in the market are for all of that. All that said, Russia, I think, because of Putin and the leaders around him, having suffered through the collapse of the Soviet Union, they were much younger when that took place, and they certainly are frustrated by their leaders, who they hold accountable for that loss, are energized, intensely so, about returning Russia to a world stage and to a sense of greatness for the nation. And if any of you have ever spent time in Russia, being around the Russian people is a good thing. They're good people. They're hardy people. They're tough people. 22 million of them were killed in World War II, standing up to Nazism and that aggression. They got within 30 miles of Moscow, and they made that army turn around defeated. Quite remarkable what they did. They have pride. And Putin knows that. He knows that population will suffer and be willing to suffer. So that's what he does as a strategy. He creates this myth that the United States is really the aggressor in the world, that we've caused all the problems in the Middle East, in Afghanistan, and we are the strategic problem. And what has to be done is we must contain the United States. And NATO is also a threat to us. Much as Germany was a threat to us in the past, they could possibly be a threat to us in the future. And it's true. While we don't believe that Europe is going to attack Russia again, as Germany did in World War II, the Russians have it in their psychic. A Frenchman was there in the 19th century and put Moscow on fire. A German was there in the 20th century and came mighty close to doing very much the same thing. They want a buffer on their western border that they had post-World War II all the way up until 1991. That's Eastern Europe. All of that is largely in NATO now. Putin is fixated on NATO. He wants to weaken it. the transatlantic alliance that has served us so well for all of these years. Now, there's challenges with it, to be sure. A lot of those governments are social democracies, and some of those leaders are feckless. They won't stand up even to protect their own people, much less the alliance. And some of them lack spine in terms of what their predecessors were like. Henry Kissinger said once they move down the line of social democracies, the Europeans will find it difficult not only to fight for somebody else, but even to fight for themselves. And I think that prophetic statement that he made 30 years ago has turned out to be somewhat true. All that said, the NATO alliance is very important to us. Russia wants to weaken it. They eventually want to break it. And they want to weaken the United States' will to be a global leader in the world today.
And yet, there they are in Syria. I think they're even in the North Pole. They're trying to move out. They are developing weapon systems, hypersonic weapons, as the Chinese are too. Is Putin just an irritant, or is he a serious problem? Isn't he also building alliances with the Chinese?
Yeah, I think Russia today is a threat. They're adversaries, to be sure. And because of Putin's aggressiveness and his lack of patience, by comparison to the Chinese, I think he's much more of a near-term threat for us. The economic burdens and social burdens that we just discussed are a millstone, and it'll become much more of a mother lode for them as time goes on, and it'll actually weaken the nation state and its capacity to wage a major war. But I'm telling you, Mark, on the commission I was on for the National Defense Strategy for a year, well, I can't get into all the details of it. We certainly provided it to the Congress. In a general sense, if we had to deal with Russia in Europe today, we're an ocean away. We have very little capacity there for the United States. It's not what we had post-World War II for all of those years of the Cold War. We would be challenged if we were fighting, say, over the Baltics. Article 5, NATO declares it. One country attacked, all 28 countries respond to that. We're collectively going to fight Russia. That would challenge.
I want to ask you when we come back, why is it a challenge? Is it because we've removed so many resources? Is it because we haven't upgraded? Is it because there aren't enough troops? I'll ask you in just a moment. Ladies and gentlemen, don't forget, every week, most weeknights, you can watch me on Levin TV, Levin TV. Here's how you sign up. Call 844-LEVIN-TV, 844-LEVIN-TV, or check us out at blazetv.com/Mark, blazetv.com/Mark. We'll be right back. No. Warfare, why is that?
Well, first of all, they've been very successful operating below conventional warfare, using hybrid warfare, where they create civil unrest using their special operation forces to do that. And then on a phony claim, they bring in forces that are not wearing Russian uniforms to put down that unrest and claim that territory. That happened in Georgia, that happened in Crimea, and also in eastern Ukraine. That has been successful. They do that because they want to paralyze decision makers as to whether this is really a real war or not. Should we go and help the Ukrainians or not? They got inside President Obama's head, I believe, and paralyzed him that there's too much risk to do that. It's really not a war. And so we abdicated. Very successful strategy. However, they're also preparing for the potential of a conventional war with us. And if we had to fight with them over Eastern Europe, we have to get there. We're an ocean away. We would struggle with that. Our commission concluded our casualty rates for personnel and high-value assets, ships and airplanes in particular, some of our most sophisticated, would be at rates we haven't seen since the Korean War and World War II. And that, I think, is an absolute fact.
Because of the same technology the Chinese are working with?
Yeah. China and Russia are using the same asymmetric capability. When they saw Desert Storm and the Iraq War, as I mentioned before, high-end conventional warfare by the United States, they realized the only way you could win a war against the United States, you would have to take away the air power premise and prowess that we have. And that's just not airplanes, it's cruise missiles, it's the whole ensemble of it.
They blind us.
Yeah, and once you take that away, whatever they're doing on the ground, say in Europe, it becomes very vulnerable to their tanks, airplanes, and missiles. So if we were fighting over the Baltics, they have at Kaliningrad offensive ship missiles, long-range missiles, and they can bring up to the border of Russia strike bombers using cruise missiles that can range every airfield we have in Europe and every port that our ships are coming
into. Well, now let me ask you this, and I don't want you to give away any national security secrets. Can we do the same to them?
We can do a lot of damage to them, but we have to get there. See, in the Cold War, we were pre-positioned there. We had stocks in warehouses, and we had 400,000 troops. No one is suggesting we need something like that today. But we have to increase our deterrence. To prevent conventional war that I'm talking about, the way we have done that in the past so successfully is making certain that we have adequate deterrence. What is deterrence? Deterrence is getting in the head of your adversary. He looks at that capability you have, and it's real. And it's going to impose significant cost on him. Right now, that capability is not what it should be when you're looking at China and when you're looking at Russia. That's why the Trump defense buildup is so important to us. It can't be 2 years. It's got to be 5 or 6 to dig ourselves out of this hole that we put ourselves in. The second thing is, not only does he have to see the capability is going to impose cost, but he's got to believe that you would use it. In the Obama presidency, I would suggest the capability wasn't what it should be, and we're improving on that, but we're not there yet. But Putin knew full well that Obama wouldn't use it. That's not where we are today. When they look at the Trump administration and President Trump, they know that he would use it. And I think, despite all the rhetoric that's going on about Russia, the thing that Putin pays more attention to than anything else is that defense buildup that's going on. Why? Because when Reagan did the defense buildup in the 1980s, that contributed to the collapse of the Soviet Union. It wasn't singular, certainly. There were other factors involved, and a lot of them were internal problems that the Soviet Union had. But it was a major contributor to it. Putin is looking at that, and he fears the United States getting the advanced capability that it has always had and getting back to having the conventional domination that we had.
Has Trump been tougher on Russia than Obama?
Oh, by far. Absolutely by far. What happens is you're the president, and it mystifies me a little bit, I mean, just to be frank about it, and is that he goes way out of his way to want to be friendly with adversaries. So it's President Xi, who's his very good friend. It's Putin, who he wants to have a relationship with. He knows it's not quite right. And even with Kim Jong-un, who's one of the true thugs of the world. But I give him some concession here because I think the motivation is simply this. He knows full well that these are adversary nations. They're much more than competitors to the United States. He'll maybe use that word to be nice, but he knows full well these are adversaries. And these are countries that can clearly threaten the security of the United States. But I think what he believes is, based on his own personal attributes, he thinks if I can have a decent relationship with an adversary, maybe we can make some progress.
But he's been tougher on every one of those countries you mentioned than Obama ever was. And that's the bottom line. He's tough where he needs to be tough most of the time. And I think these other, as you were saying, these other leaders, they either respect him or they fear him or they're not sure what to expect of him, but they're not taking provocative actions right now because of him. We'll be right back. President Trump.
Well, that's interesting. I travel to the Middle East, Europe, and the Far East. And when I'm talking to leaders around the world, at times they're uncertain because the president speaks so frequently on so many subjects. But I think they're adjusting to that. They're not used to having a president of the United States speak publicly virtually every single day. What I tell them is pay attention to U.S. policy, because U.S. policy as it pertains to your region and to your country, there's only one person making a decision on that policy, and that's President Trump. So pay attention to policy. And certainly you're going to pay attention to what the president's saying, but it's the policy that's the most important thing.
Iran. How do you think the president's handled Iran?
He went to Riyadh last summer, 55 leaders in the room, and he told them this. He said, I stand here with you, and I want to cooperate with you to standing up to the #1 strategic threat in this region, which is Iran. And I know the administration has been trying to stitch together a closer alliance with the Middle East nations, sort of like what I call an Arab NATO, which I think is very much needed. The Iranians, ever since the Islamic Republic of Iran was formed in 1980, have had a singular goal, which is dominate and control the Middle East. To accomplish that goal, they have two objectives. One, drive the United States out of the region, and two, destroy the state of Israel. And they make this statement I'm talking about in almost the same words I'm describing every single year for the last 37 years. That's the reality of what we're dealing with here. And they are succeeding at that. What's the measure of that success? Control of Lebanon, almost total control of Syria, except for the portion where we are in eastern Syria, more political influence in Iraq than what we have, beginning the civil war in Yemen for the single purpose of encroaching on Saudi Arabia, because Yemen is to the south of that, and that is the prize that they have been after, so they can squeeze Saudi Arabia from Syria and also from the south.
Cut off the water lines.
And cut off the water, absolutely, Straits of Hormuz. And, of course, Syria is most largely about, it's their strategic anchor in the Middle East. It's most largely about encroaching on Israel. There's 130,000 rockets that they've placed in Lebanon for that purpose as we speak today. And they're also they want to put bases in Syria with missiles and rockets there. Every time they try to do that, Israel attacks them.
What can Israel do about this? Russia has sort of sent mixed signals, stop hitting sites in Syria. This is really life or death for the Israelis, isn't it?
Oh, yeah, very much so. That is why they've literally conducted somewhere between 100 and 150 airstrikes into Syria going against Iranian targets. Iran is very aggressive here. They fly rockets and missiles into Damascus airport, put them in warehouses. Israelis just struck it 2 weeks ago in one of those warehouses at the international airport of Damascus. They have a land bridge from Iran through Iraq through Syria. It isn't formalized yet. That's one of the things that I'm opposed to, is why we would pull out prematurely from Syria. We don't want that land bridge forming. The threat to Israel is real. I think publicly they did not disagree with the president's decision, because they have not had a president as supportive of Israel in a generation as President Trump is. Privately, they were really taken back by the decision because they know it impacts on their security.
You think war there is inevitable? I want your answer when we come back. We'll be right back. So, General, war between Israel, Iran, or some collection of countries in the Middle East is inevitable?
Yeah, it's more likely. And I think the success they've had in Syria, particularly if they're able to gain control of the entire country, will contribute significantly to it. And they try to avoid direct confrontation themselves. They use their proxies, and they've been so successful at that. It started right after they took over the country, the Iranian country, from the Shah. When they blew up the U.S. embassy in Lebanon, they using their proxies, Marine barracks proxies, Air Force barracks in Saudi Arabia, 4 years in Iraq, targeted on killing American soldiers, a 10-year hostage-taking program that they sponsored. They killed our CIA station chief, and it damaged the Reagan presidency, where it nearly brought the presidency down. What they would do here is use their proxies again from Lebanon, from Syria, multiple locations firing simultaneously into Jerusalem and Tel Aviv, imposing casualties on the Israelis that they have never seen in their history, rather significantly. that would lead to major confrontation. I believe an Israeli response to something like that, and I think this is what the Iranians are not anticipating, they would go full throttle into Lebanon. And if that wasn't enough, they would go to Iran and take as much of their military capabilities out. That is war. And the Iranians are serious when they say every single year, drive the United States out of the region is our objective to accomplish our ultimate goal and destroy the state of Israel. And they are about that business. And I think the leaders of Israel know it. This president is very much aware of it and tuned into that. And we have got to make certain.
Who wins that war?
Israel does, aided by the United States. They have never, ever asked us to fight with them. They have asked us to help them in terms of military capability.
And a lot of these Arab countries probably won't sit on the sidelines either. They may view it as an opportunity as well.
The relationship with Israel and the Arab states, particularly Saudi Arabia and the UAE and Jordan, has never been closer. And I mean, we're at the point where they share intelligence together. Think of that. These are countries that were warring at one time, and now they're literally helping each other against a common enemy.
Yeah, because just, again, as a pedestrian, I don't see Israel sitting there and only fighting in Lebanon. If they're taking it in Jerusalem and Tel Aviv, they're going to say, okay, we're going to hit Tehran, we're going to hit their government center, we're going to hit their military centers, and we're going to hit them with everything we've got.
That's true. And that's why I hope the administration can stitch together an Arab NATO, because standing together collectively against Iran would really impose a deterrent capability where the cost would be the destruction of their regime if they tried to do something.
Mm-hmm. Well, let's hope it doesn't reach that point. And let's hope it doesn't reach the point where Iran gets nuclear weapons either. It's been a great honor, General.
Yeah, I enjoyed it.
Thanks
Good
so
talking
much.
to you, Mark.
Appreciate it. Don't miss us next time on Life, Liberty, and Levin.